Welcome to Therapy is Dope with Alicia.
And Julie, let's make self help fun again. No, seriously, laughter is the best medicine.
Come and join us as we introduce new ways of thinking and being.
And hopefully get you laughing along the way.
What's up? We're back from the holidays.
Hello, hello. And I have a very exciting topic today, and it is narcissism.
Oh, yes.
Alicia brought it up. She's like, "We got to talk about this" a few weeks ago. And I was like, "Okay, it's on the list." And now we got to it. It's like this is really exciting because there's so much to it. And there's a lot of questions that I also need to ask because I'm not sure what it is exactly. And I don't know if it's forever or is it a short period of time? Can you change? Are you a forever narcissist? I know so many questions. Alicia.
It's really interesting because the personality disorders, I don't think were like heavily focused on in my studies in grad school because technically, usually you don't bill the billing companies with a personality disorder. And the reason that you don't bill using the code of a personality disorder is because you usually don't get that much better. So insurance companies are less likely to want to pay you if somebody's diagnosis is a personality disorder. So usually we make that like the secondary or tertiary diagnosis, and there's usually something else as the primary. But realistically, if a person has a personality disorder, that's the primary. That's the primary problem.
Because I thought I was a narcissist because I look at like different times of my relationships or different times of not just romantic but like platonic relationships too, and I go, wow, I really act like a narcissist. Maybe at that period of my life I was one, but apparently if it's personality, I don't think I am now. So was I just in a phase?
Well, I mean, I think okay. So I'm kind of torn on the ideas out here about narcissism because on one hand, people throw that term around a lot, and so they damn near call everybody a narcissist. And I think also the way that we think about narcissists isn't necessarily correct because there's a difference between being selfish and being a narcissist. And narcissism is much more pervasive kind of across the board, and then some people just choose to be a little bit more selfish, and everybody's selfish, like let's be honest, everybody has a level and degree of selfishness in them. So I think that people get very confused about what narcissism is, and then the problem also is that I do think, unfortunately, that there are more narcissists than we know that there are. So I think, like I saw a red table talk with Will Smith's wife, and she was saying that Hollywood's full of narcissists, and I was like, does that make sense? And then I was like, well, I guess yeah, it could make sense because I think that narcissists can be born that way, and then I also think that they can be created. And so it's a very sort of almost like contradictory and confusing subject. And so
Yeah,
I can understand.
yeah, I was gonna say, like, when you say some are born or some are created, so if you are a narcissist that was created, couldn't you be uncreated? Couldn't you
Yes.
like follow certain behavioral patterns or change certain behavioral patterns so you're not that anymore?
Yes. And you know, more and more I'm seeing on social media, which, is obviously fact, that some people there's now a category of self-aware narcissists, and these people have been diagnosed and they care that they're diagnosed narcissistic and they are working on it. So I think that those people for sure can change. And I think just in general, when we're talking about personality disorders, the changes usually aren't like a whole 180. It's usually not like this person's completely different now. Like in the world of addiction, that happens. Like the person using versus the person sober, it's like totally night and day who they are. that doesn't really happen with personality disorders. It's more like small incremental changes. And, you know, if that's the case, if you're self-aware and you're working on yourself, yes, I think anybody can change. But just in general, personality disorders don't have the best recovery rate. And the ones that are made, I think that they're made because of power and money and fame. And oftentimes people in the upper echelon of the socioeconomic status, they tend to be a lot more entitled and a lot more thinking that everything should be about them. And that's because that's been their experience. I have money, so people bow to me, sort of thing. And that can create, I think, more of a problem. And that's not everybody with money or anything like that, but I could see how that would be a problem more so in Hollywood, because these people have money and they have fame and everybody's bowing to them all the time. So they start to think, I must be the shit, basically.
That's what I was just gonna say. And it's not only, I think, Hollywood, it's anything that has some type of fame connected to it, right? So it might, or money, or whatever people define as power to them, right? So because professional athletes, because they're on the field or on the court, and when they're there, people treat them like God. You know, like I remember seeing a little snippet of this water boy or something, and Tom Brady grabbed the water bottle, sprayed it, whatever, and gave it back to him, and ran on the field, and the guy was looking at the water bottle like, oh my God, Tom. And so they're treated as God. They're like, I bet you he stole that water bottle that night. He's like, no, I'm keeping this, and so it's being treated, and I don't really blame them, right? And if you really think about it, there's actually a comedian that came out with like a special that talked about this a little bit. I forgot his name, but anyways, he just said, think about it. He was talking about Mick Jagger going to SNL, and they said, hey, is Mick Jagger a nice person? And he went, well, you have to define what it is, because he's Mick Jagger, so he's on stage and people are loving him and treating him as God for the last 50 years of his life. Anywhere he goes, he probably doesn't pay for anything. He probably doesn't ever worry about, and he could park in the middle of the street and walk out, and people are like, oh my God, can I park your car for you? Or whatever, right? And he could do what he wants. And at some point, and I don't blame him, if someone did that to me, after a while I'd be like, I am the shit.
Yeah, I actually have been known to say that when people get money or power, which they can go hand in hand or they can be separate. For example, police, not trying to stir a pot here, but just saying, you don't know if the power is going to go straight to their ego or not. And I think the majority of the time it does. And I think it's actually the minority that remain humble and grounded. And I think it's probably conscious work that people have to do, or I don't know, maybe it's just in their nature. But I assume that there's a temptation there at some point to let it go to their ego.
Absolutely. When you get your ass kissed everywhere you go, you get pulled over, hi sir, ma'am, hi, what, and no one's mean to you. It's like, so it's hard. But just taking a couple of steps back, we forgot to define what narcissism is.
Yeah. So this is also hairy, because nothing's going to be black and white here, people. Sorry, I apologize. There's a diagnostic statistical manual that we use to diagnose people, and what that says versus what we know about narcissism is a little bit different. So, and this is true of a lot of diagnoses. Another example would be ADHD. We have criteria, and there's like 12 symptoms that define ADHD according to the manual. But in reality, there's been so much research done since that manual was made that we have a lot deeper understanding of ADHD now. And hopefully in the next manual, we're going to be defining it differently. And so that's kind of the case for narcissism as well. And narcissism's been a very hot topic because it's the information is more readily available now. So I think when people think about narcissists, they think of them as people who are obsessed with themselves. And that is true to a degree. They can be people who are obsessed with themselves, but any diagnosis can look different on different people. So not all narcissists are just obsessed with themselves. So we're going to make it even more confusing for you. So, generally speaking, they might be obsessed with themselves. They might be, they have a air of importance about them. They think that they're very important, and they only want to talk to other people who are really important. And of course, it's who they deem to be important. So it's not necessarily who you and I would deem to be important, but generally speaking, it's people outside of their family. Like people in their family, not that important to them, but people outside of their family, everything is about appearance and how things are going to look outside of the family. So I need to, when I'm in public, people are going to think that I'm charming. People are going to think that I'm beautiful. People are going to think that I'm great, because that's how I present outside of my household. Inside my household, I'm going to be a total asshole though. And the people very close to me are going to understand that I'm an asshole, that everything's about me, that I'm entitled, that I'm going to kind of try to run the show. And when things don't go my way, that's when all hell breaks loose. So if you disagree with me, or you don't want to do what I want to do, or you don't want to do it the way that I think we should do it, or you embarrass me in public, God forbid, that's going to be a big problem. And they get very nasty. And this is why I was telling you, I don't think you've ever been a narcissist, because I just can't imagine you, and I could be wrong, but I can't imagine you being nasty. And they get nasty. Like they will cut you to your core. They will find your deepest insecurity and throw that shit in your face. It's very sick. It's very sick.
Yeah, I guess I have boundaries in that way. I would never do that to my parents or, like some of my sisters, but I have my older sister and I have a very tumultuous relationship. So I've in my 20s, I'm pretty sure I've said things that are crazy mean to her. But is it like specific to somebody, is it like one person you hold a grudge about, and you're a narcissist to that one person, or you just generally a narcissist?
No, it's definitely not specific to one person. And that's actually a common flawed thought that people have, like when they're in a relationship with a narcissist, the person in the relationship with the narcissist will think it's got to be me, like I've got to be the problem somehow because you're so mean and cruel to me that it's got to be me. But it's not just you. They're probably like that at work to certain people, not to the boss. Don't get me wrong, they're not stupid. They know who they can treat poorly and who they can't. So to some people at work, they probably treat them like absolute garbage. And to other people, they probably treat them very strategically with their charm and their charisma because they're not dumb. So, God, I think that just contradicted itself again. So although it's not just one person, they are strategic in who they treat like shit. And usually it's the people closest to them or the people beneath them, quote unquote, the people that they know they can get away with treating like that.
Oh, because I am a little bit. I feel like we're all a little bit mean to our mothers because our mom.
Wow.
Because Nick Kroll just came out with a Netflix comedy special, and in it he goes, "We're so annoying to our moms." He's like, "This is how everybody's conversation with the mom is. Ring, right? She calls in, ring, and you pick up. You go, what?" Because that's everyone's first reaction to their mom. And he's like, "Do you know why? Because they're just really annoying because they pick up on the first ring no matter what. They need to give us space." Like he said, like my dad, I call him, and then 2 weeks later I get a call and he goes, "Yeah, Dad? Oh, do you need anything?" He's like, "No, I'm just calling you back." When did I call you? I don't know, like 2 weeks ago. He's like, so you don't get annoyed at him because he's so aloof.
Oh my God. That does sound pretty accurate. And I would say that women and their mothers tend to fight a lot more. Men probably are just more so annoyed by their mothers. but I think they fight less usually with their moms. So that's a common trend, but that's not really, I mean, narcissists will run the whole household. Like everybody's going to be afraid of that person and walk on eggshells to try to please that person, because you also never know what's going to piss them off. Like one day you could spill a drink and they'll be like, "Oh, it's okay, honey." And then the next day you spill a drink and they're like, "What the fuck? What is wrong with you?"
Oh. A lot of abusive people are narcissists.
Yes. Abusive people tend to be either narcissistic or psychopaths. And sometimes there's a combination. Like a lot of times with personality disorders, you'll see comorbidities, like they'll have two personality disorders sort of like overlapping, and it's so nasty and ugly. But that is something that happens common. It's a common occurrence. So yes, abusers tend to be narcissistic or psychopath. Definitely up there, sometimes even borderline, because borderline people tend to have really intense emotions, and when they are in that really intense emotion, they really have a hard time controlling themselves. So yeah, personality disorders and abusers for sure.
Cause yeah, I was thinking about, when I was younger and and I was being abused, and not for my parents, clear that up, but the abuser, what would say really nasty things to me, and the inconsistency of it. Like it would be, like a moving target. Like one day, it would be like, okay, give me a cup of water or something. I'll give her a glass of water, and it wouldn't have enough ice or something, right? She would just go ballistic like crazy on me. And then the next day would be like, why did you put so much ice? Like it would just be a moving target on what she wanted, and it felt like walking on eggshells. But how do we know if that diagnosis was that young? Like, are you born? You're literally born one, so like the toddlers are just throwing tantrums all the
Well, let me be clear that all little kids are narcissists. So actually a perfect example of a narcissist is a little kid, because they do not have the capacity to think outside of themselves. So everything is about them, and they don't have developmentally, their brain is not in a place where they can think outside of themselves. So yes, toddlers are narcissists, and most people grow out of it, but some people don't. And again, going back to my education in graduate school, they told us that personality disorders are born out of trauma, not genetics. However, I think now that we know a lot more about epigenetics and the fact that trauma can be inherited, it certainly appears to me that some people who maybe did not experience trauma themselves can inherit traits of narcissism, and yes, sort of be born as a narcissist, even though they didn't experience anything that would necessarily have caused it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I can think of like one of my clients, she dated this guy who was total narcissist. Another key symptom of narcissism is that they never admit they're wrong. They're never wrong. It's always somebody else's fault, usually you, if you're the target, if you're the person getting abused, it's always going to be your fault. And they'll like twist things so well that you buy it, and people buy it for a really long time. And that keeps them in the relationships with the people. Like, damn, I just can't do anything right. Like I keep messing this up, and it's not true. It's just the way that they've twisted things to not take any responsibility themselves. So this guy was very much like that, and this girl was falling for it essentially. And one day she was having a conversation with his grandmother, and she got really close with his grandmother, and his grandmother told her, yeah, my husband was the exact same way, and the only reason I stayed with him was because I had kids. You need to leave.
What?
Yes. Yes. But like, because I was asking her, like, well, what is his family like? Because she was like, I love his family. They're so great. Like, he didn't experience any trauma. He didn't have anything major go on in his life that would cause that. But when his grandmother said, my husband was the same way, it was like, ding, for me, it was like, okay, then he just inherited these traits.
But if, okay, I'm being on his side, like in his defense,
Mm-hmm.
him being born with it, right? Inherited traits, he can't really do anything about it. So since he's lived this lifestyle for probably decades, I'm guessing he's in his 30s or something. Is it too late to start getting help?
I never think it's too late. I mean, the research shows that we can develop new neural pathways, which is what we need to do to change, into our 90s. So if that's the case, then we can always change. However, the first step to changing is realizing that there's a problem. And if you never take responsibility for anything, then there's never a problem. What is there
Uh,
to change? I don't need to change. What do I need to change? It's not
every,
me, it's everybody else.
yeah, if they are a change or they're not so crazy or they're not so defensive, then everything would be fine. Oh,
If you didn't make me so mad, I wouldn't act this way.
that sounds very, oh my God, that sounds so abusive. Because during my abuse, once I started going to therapy and I started researching more abusive of relationships, that would be a key thing, would be like, if you didn't make me do it, I wouldn't have done it. And I heard so much, but I struggled with self-esteem growing up. And even when I was younger, I just looked up, this person was my hero, so anything that person said, it was like I believed. So when it said, if you didn't make me do it, and I would think, I'm so stupid, I wish I didn't do that. If I didn't do that, she wouldn't have hit me, she wouldn't have done that to me, she wouldn't, and I made her do it. So it was years of just thinking that I made someone hurt me.
Yeah, I know. And that's how they get us. There was a story that I will never forget because this client, I literally threw my notebook when he told me this story. So his girlfriend was super manipulative. I mean, both of them have their issues for sure, but she had done something that she knew was completely unacceptable to him. And he finally confronted her about it, and it was blew up into a big argument. And in the end, she couldn't argue any of his points anymore. So she just started bawling. And this is what they do. They become the victim and they have these moments of truth. And she just started saying like, "Oh, I'm just so terrible. I don't know why I do these things." And he felt bad for her and he almost took back the breakup. He was breaking up with her
Oh,
and he almost took it back. And he told me, "I left, but when I left, I felt so bad and I cried on my way home." And I took my notebook and threw it. And I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me? She got you, man." And that's what they do. Like, if they can't do anything else, like nothing else is working, they just become the victim and they all of a sudden admit everything. And then they get you to comfort them.
oh,
It's
oh.
mind blowing what these people do. And I don't even think it's always conscious. I don't think they're consciously doing it. I think they really are feeling like, you know,
I
I must.
actually think it's her fault. Like, she's still in my life today, and I don't think she thinks it's her fault, or she doesn't. I don't think she is. She thinks that she's manipulative, or she doesn't seem like she's like. Because why would a narcissist want to live that life?
Well,
Right?
it's very miserable because deep inside they know that they're the problem deep inside, but they can't admit it because one of the things that they fear the most is abandonment. So if they admit that they're this horrible person, then you might leave them. And if you leave them, then they have to face the music that they are this person who has done all of this terrible stuff. And they cannot handle that at all. That truth is way too heavy for them. So even though they have these moments of like clarity and honesty and they tell the truth, and most of the time it is for a manipulative purpose, but the next day they'll deny all of it over again and be like, "Well, I don't think that was really what happened." And it's
Uh,
like a serious mind fuck for people because they're like, "Wait a minute, like last night you were crying and begging me to stay, and now today you're like, was it really that big of a deal?" and but that's what they have to tell themselves because the truth is way too painful for them. So they cannot acknowledge the truth for too long, only in small doses, and they have to immediately dismiss it. But another thing is that if they get you to feel bad for them and to tell them like, oh, it's not that bad, you're not that bad, that gives them permission to continue to be who they are.
So are we supposed to have them literally fall, like get to the bottom of the pit, like if their life, for them to change?
When you listen to people who are the more self-aware narcissists, that is kind of what it takes. It does
Oh,
take them sort of like losing a lot of people or almost losing their partner or, something along those lines, because without consequences, we can convince ourselves that anything is okay. If I'm drinking at work every day and nobody says anything to me, then I can convince myself it's totally fine. Why would it be? Well, it's not a problem. No one says anything. No one's complained. So is it a problem?
and it's kind of like if people complain and said, hey, you're kind of drinking a lot, versus if you drink, if you show up like this anymore, you're losing your job. And
Exactly.
I'm gonna lose my job, I'm gonna lose my life, I'm gonna lose my partner, I need help.
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
There has to be consequences. And we, as you and I'm talking about me and you, we're nice people. And
sometimes.
as nice people, we like to sugarcoat and we like to focus on the positives and we like to encourage. And sometimes that can become enabling, unfortunately.
I can see that, definitely.
Yeah, there is a such thing as being too nice and not setting enough boundaries and not creating enough consequences for people. And then that just enables them to continue on doing what they're doing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's so, going back to children, it's not any different with kids. Kids have to have consequences or they don't learn that something is wrong. And how you choose to do the consequences is totally up to the parents. But there has to be a consequence. Otherwise, why would they do anything different?
Yeah. Why wouldn't they eat chocolate all night? The consequences, they're gonna wake up with a huge stomach ache and they go, okay, now you probably shouldn't be doing that. It's like, ah, you're right. Right? Or, if you're gonna be late for school every single day, which I was in high school, I was late to school every single day. Then I think on my 30th day or something that I was late, I had to do lunch detention like for 3 days in a row. And I was like, I hate this. So after that, I don't think I was late anymore. I needed a wake up call.
Yeah. Yep. So, you know, adults are really not that different from children. There has to be a consequence. So if you're in a relationship and you don't like a behavior that someone has, you can change the standard and say, I'm not going to tolerate this, and then follow up with that and be a person of your word. And that person will either have one of two choices. Either they exit your life because they can't meet your standard, or they meet your standard. So it's interesting how people are like, I don't understand why everyone treats me this way. Because you let them.
Mm. And we let them because of our self-esteem. I wasn't very confident growing up. So I always was taken advantage of, not only by narcissists, but by everybody, right? So my time was valued by what other people felt like, what I could do for other people. So I
Mm,
felt valued when I could, I just felt valued as a person when I brought value into someone's life. And it didn't matter if that hurt me or not, or I only had, 2 hours of sleep because I was up all night trying to do this. And I would spend so much time on someone else's issues. And maybe I was also running away from my stuff or whatnot. But I still struggle, with saying no. Like it's hard for me to say no. I'm sorry, I can't help you, or no, I don't have time to do that. That's still hard for me to do.
yeah. Yeah. And, you were conditioned by someone who sounds kind of like a narcissist. I can't say for sure if they are or not. I haven't assessed them. But this person sounds kind of narcissistic, and when you are um raised around someone like that, you become conditioned to meet their needs, because if you don't, there's punishment. So then it becomes you're trained, at least this is the way it goes most of the time. If a narcissist meets a narcissist, oh my God, the blowout is just whew, terrible.
Also, normally they wouldn't last in a long-term relationship.
No, that's not going to go very well. In the beginning, it'll probably be fine, because in the beginning we're love bombing and we're charming and we're doing everything we can to make this person like us. And then when it's my way or the highway, and the other person also feels like it's my way or the highway, that's just not gonna, it's not gonna last very long. But most of the time we don't see that dynamic. Most of the time we see the person who is being submissive and who is pleasing and who is trying to accommodate this person who's very difficult. And so then they learn that that keeps them safe. And so it's basically a survival tactic. Like, I'm just people pleasing to survive, essentially.
So what's the difference between dating somebody and like getting super excited about them? Like okay, if I'm dating a narcissist or dating a regular person that's just really excited about a relationship, so he does a love bomb and whatnot. But I guess a love bomb is just being really overly like, I love you, you are the one, blah blah blah, like super early on, like a week into it. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it can be difficult to tease apart. It really can. And sometimes we don't know until there's been some time. And I think that's one of the reasons that people tend to say, don't marry someone after you've only known them for 3 months, you know? And I believe that you can meet someone and know that that person's the one in 3 months and go for it, which is, you know, what you're talking about. Like, how do you know that this is a narcissist? And so it can be very difficult, because yes, it is possible that you just met the love of your life and the two of you are just really excited about each other. Or it's possible that this person is a narcissist and we just need to give it time for them to show their true colors.
How time is enough time?
Oh, that's a dang good question. I always think about the movie Enough, when Jennifer Lopez marries that guy who's like persistent and pursues her, and like as soon as she marries him, he's super abusive. So I don't know. I mean, I can't answer that. The thing I can say is that we should look for red flags. And, you know, I feel like the young people are talking about red flags all the time, and like damn near everything has become a red flag.
Just give up too, right? Give the difference between giving up too fast or like
Yeah.
under the true red flag.
I mean, everything in life is about balance, and is incredibly hard. I really think that that's like the whole task of life, is to try to find balance. It's
Oh,
really, it's so hard. It's so hard to find the balance. So what is the answer? I don't have one. I really don't. Like, I've even been fooled by friends of mine who were dating somebody and they were moving really quickly in the relationship, and I was like, but this person seems so great, and I was all excited and happy for them, and then it turned out they were an abuser. So I mean,
yeah.
I've been fooled myself. And I've seen posts where people are like, if you're healthy, you can't be fooled by a narcissist. And I don't know if I think that's true or not, because I kind of feel like narcissists are so good, anybody could be fooled by them. In
See,
fact, I feel like most people have been.
yeah. And I was gonna say that. I was like, oh, because I struggle with self-esteem. And now I feel like I'm the most confident I've ever been in my life. And I'm like, oh, I'll never date a narcissist again. But I don't know if that's true. Maybe I might.
I mean, I hope that you don't. I hope that you've kind of grown past that, and I hope that that's not okay. So go moving into like a little bit of a deeper level of all of this. Unfortunately, I feel like we do attract what we've experienced. So when you've experienced trauma and you've experienced narcissism, I think you're more likely to attract that. And I think when you do personal work and you get healthier, you're less likely to attract that same kind of person. Not that you couldn't, but it's less likely. So
Mm.
if you find that you have attracted narcissists repeatedly, then you probably do need to do some more deeper personal work and set yourself up for something better and different. And all it takes is one healthy relationship for people to be like, whoa, what have I been doing? And
It's
suddenly the old standard is no longer tolerable to them. Like, that's not going to fly. That's not going to happen. And so those people I do think are less likely to engage in those relationships because they've done it already and they've learned from it. But I think like the average person who hasn't experienced trauma could still fall victim to a narcissist because they are falling for the show, essentially.
right. Huh, that's so interesting. And if you even think about it food wise, you could say, oh, I eat boiled eggs, hard boiled eggs every day since I was, since I was born, whatever, until now. And I never learned how to cook and I don't eat out and whatever. So you never experience food. But the first time you actually eat, like, you're like, cheesecake? What? I'll never just eat plain eggs again. You try an omelet for the first time or whatever. You go, oh, I'm never going to do that again. It's the same concept, right? It's like once you're in a relationship and you just feel really happy and you're not walking on eggshells and you're not scared or nervous if like the other shoe's going to drop, or like, is this going to be okay? Or can I talk about these things? And can I, do I feel free in my relationship? Once you get into a relationship that you do feel like that, I absolutely agree with that. I've dated narcissists too, but I also thought I was one. So maybe they were just bad in relationships. I don't know. But I'm currently in a relationship now that he just really showers me in attention and everything. And I do feel like, oh, even if this ends, right? And I'm okay with that. But I don't, my next one, I couldn't date anything less than that. He's brought a new standard in my relationships.
Yeah. Another reason that I don't think you're a narcissist, there's two other symptoms, so to speak, that I want to mention that I don't think apply to you. And you can again correct me if I'm wrong, but one of them is that the rules are always different for the narcissist than they are for anyone else. So this is a dumb example, but I'll give you one. Let's just say, for example, that the narcissist hates when anybody farts. But if the narcissist farts, then that's funny. Like, that's hilarious. I farted. That's so funny. But if you fart, ew, that's disgusting. You're disgusting. You disgust me. And that's how they are. Like, whatever they do is totally fine. But if you do it, they may or may not think that's okay. So the rules are different for them than they are for anybody else. And the other thing is, they don't respect anybody's boundary. So if you're saying, oh no, I can't really do that, they're like, yes, you can. Do it. Just do it. I want you to do it. Come on. What do I have to do to get you to do it? And they're not going to stop until they get what they want. Or like, if you close your door because you want privacy, they just open your door. They don't ask if they can come in. They're just going to open the door because the rules are different for them. If you did that to them, it would be a big problem, but they can do it to you because your boundaries don't matter. What's more important is what I want right now. And what I want is to open this door. The same can even go for food. Like if they said to you like, oh, Julie, where do you want to go to eat? And you were like, oh, I'm really feeling Mexican tonight. And they were like, nah, I don't want to eat Mexican. Let's eat Chinese. Like I can't imagine you doing that to somebody. I can't imagine you doing either one of those things. Like, oh, you need space? I don't care. I'm coming in anyway.
Yeah, no, I'm not like that now, but I think there's parts of me throughout my life that were like that.
I think we all have parts of narcissism because again, we can all be selfish. So anytime we're being selfish, we could appear to be narcissistic. But we're talking about something that's on a more extreme level where this is who they are all the time. And you know, I think there's a spectrum of narcissism. There's mild to severe. And if you're on the mild end, maybe you only have your crazy outbursts every 3 to 4 months. And if you're on the severe end, it's like daily, people are worried about what's going to happen. But with any narcissist, they go through periods of time where they are more reasonable. And so it's almost like we immediately forget that they become unreasonable. And then we have to be reminded. And it's unfortunate because I think that's why people stay so long sometimes, because there's such gaps between when the person behaves in this negative, terrible way. That they're able to convince themselves that, oh, maybe something's changed, maybe that's different now. And that's not really the case. It's just that they're in their cycle, they're in like a nicer stage. And how fast they cycle depends on how severe they are.
No, and I think most people are hopeful, right? Hope never dies. So they're like, no, he's been nice before, or she's been nice before. She could be nice again. He could be nice. He's done nice things to me before. And we hold on to those nice moments and we justify the bad moments with the nice moments. And
Yeah.
now I don't really have bad moments in my relationship now. So it's like, oh, I don't think relationships are supposed to have bad moments like this. Not like this, you
Yeah.
know?
Not that severe. And, you know, oh shit, I just forgot what I was going to say. It was something good though. If I remember, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Oh, I was going to say narcissists can be really fun. So that's another part of the problem, is that you can have like the best day or night or week of your life with a narcissist. They're like the best time ever. And then the very next week or the very next month, they're a total tyrant. And that contrast is very confusing for people. And so people are like, whoa, what just happened? Like, who is this person? And usually the longer we're with someone, the periods of happiness get shorter and the periods of anger get longer.
Mm,
And that's generally what kind of is the demise of the relationship, if it has a demise. But narcissists are very easy to love because they can be so much fun.
yeah, just like that, your example where the grandma was with the husband and she didn't talk about divorce or anything. And also culturally at that time, divorce was probably looked down upon. And so she thought she had no other choice. But she stayed with narcissists her entire life.
Yeah. Well, and here's the other thing, you know, you were asking about change. I absolutely think every narcissist is capable of change, but from what I've seen in my career, and this is very limited, you know, I don't have like research that shows this, is that if they're going to change like completely, it usually doesn't happen until they're grandparents. And all of a sudden, when they're grandparents, they're like these they're like a totally different person. And a lot of times their kids are looking at them like, who are you? Like, you were never this nice to me, you know? But it's like, I don't know if it's like a realization that they come to, or if it's just mellowing out with age. I'm not exactly sure exactly the neurology of what's happening there for people, but I think a lot of times they end up regretting the way that they were. And I think Neil Brennan talked about it in one of his comedy skits. He was talking about how his dad was a narcissist, and at the end of his dad's life, it was really important to him to go talk to his dad and be there with him at the end of his life. And his dad finally admitted that he doesn't think he ever really loved his children. And
Wow.
Neil said that it was like a relief for him. It was sad for him to hear it out loud, but it was a relief for him because he was like, okay, I'm not crazy. It really didn't seem like
Right.
he loved us.
Oh, you know what? I might have watched the same thing. He called it his stand-up comedy series. He calls it a traumedy.
Oh, that's
He comes
funny.
to Netflix traumedies because it's true. He mixes really vulnerable, dark stuff in his comedy.
Yeah,
And it makes people uncomfortable. But I think for you and me that love, therapy and love those things, I love watching him.
yes, me too. I love it. I love Neil Brennan. I think he's fantastic. Him and Dave Chappelle are like my faves.
Oh yeah. Yeah, easy. They're fantastic. And just thinking about how vulnerable people are, and maybe that's kind of the gateway that narcissism, that maybe the first baby steps is when they're being vulnerable, when they're actually being authentically themselves and admitting these wrongs. And maybe that's too painful. They have to admit small wrongs, like, oh, I left the Oreos out last night, that was me.
Yeah.
Instead of, no, you made me leave them out. Remember, you distracted me, so I left them out, and you asked me to go take out the trash. I wouldn't have left them out if you didn't ask me to take out the trash.
Yeah.
If it was just like, oh, my fault, I left them out. Just that's
Yeah.
it. Leave it at that, except that part.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a firm believer that big change happens small. So absolutely that would be a good place for people to start. And you know, I do think, I know for myself, I remember learning in graduate school that nobody can make you feel anything. And I was like disgruntled about that message. I was like, excuse me, you're making me mad right now. Like, what are you talking about? Because in my head, that meant that people could treat you however they want and you shouldn't have any emotional response to it. And that's not necessarily what it meant, because we're human. We're going to have an emotional response to something, but we have control over how we interpret what is happening. And so therefore we cannot blame anybody for the way that we feel, because our interpretation is usually based on our own experiences and may or may not be fact.
Do you know what? That's really true, because you and I grew up really pretty differently. And let's say someone said something about, I don't know, if I bit into an apple that had a worm in it. And ever since then, I'm like, I'm never eating apples again. And let's say we're having dinner or we're having lunch or something, a picnic, and someone brought a basket of apples. I'll be like, oh my God, I would feel scared, maybe sweaty, kind of grossed out, maybe my stomach hurts. That's my reaction from my collection of experiences in my life to these basket of apples. You, on the other hand, could be like, I love apples, and be drooling and be like, yes, best thing ever, and we would have the two completely different reactions to the same thing.
Yeah. And that's where biology comes in too, because you could have taste buds that don't allow you to taste the sweetness maybe of the apple. And so it just kind of tastes watery to you, and it's like not really that appealing. And maybe my taste buds are more sensitive to sweet. And so I take the bite of the apple and I'm like, oh my God, this is delicious, right? So genetics control our taste buds. And so genetics and experiences then play a big role in whether or not we are going to like that apple. And
That
that's the same thing for anything else in life. And that's why things really aren't personal, because, maybe, I don't know, somebody got beat by an Asian boyfriend. And so now they're like, oh, I don't trust Asians. I'm just generalizing here. And so maybe they just see you and they automatically are like, oh, I don't like Julie, and they have no reason for that. They don't know you at all. But just because of this experience that they've had, they're like, oh no, can't do it. And are they allowed to say that? Are they allowed to say to themselves, I don't want to associate with Julie? Absolutely. But is that personal to you? Does that mean anything bad about you? No.
And I think we have to be in a good place in our lives to differentiate when there is that reaction, when someone says, oh, I don't like you, and instead of going, did I do something, whatever, and trying to dig into that, it's just saying, well, I know I didn't do anything wrong, I know my worth, I know, that I'm fine and I'm a good person, so what you're saying won't hurt me. But
Yeah.
that's a really hard place to be.
It's a really hard place to be. And frankly, I'm still working on it. I don't think that I'm at a place where I don't take anything personally and I have to struggle through things. But what I will say is, being in this field and having been doing work for a long time, personally, and as you know, I plan to do work the rest of my life. But I think that I don't struggle with things for as long. And I think that that's really the key that we're looking for, is how long we belabor something in our minds and in our, behavior. So I think there might be a part of us that's always like, oh shit, did I do something wrong? But
Mhm.
how long are we going to sit and obsess over it?
Yeah, and I think we mentioned this on a side conversation, maybe in a past podcast. The key to therapy is to have your therapist help you get over whatever that problem is,
Yeah.
so you can release those feelings and move on.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and some people are naturally, they just have the capacity to think in a healthier way, and that's just who they are as people, and they were sort of just popped out that way. But I think for the rest of us, it's a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a lot of work. I feel like it's always going to be work. I don't know. I feel like it's an ongoing thing, and it's almost I feel like it's delusional kind of to think that life is a destination, right? We get there, we're done. Okay, I don't need to do any more work now. We're good. It's almost like working out and getting to your perfect body, and then being like, okay, I'm good. Now I could eat all the chocolate in the world, and I could sit on the couch forever. It's like, no, once you get there, you have to keep going.
Maintenance, bitch.
Work hard, work out as hard, or like go to therapy every single day like you did before. But once a week, maintenance, check how you feel, or maybe once in 2 weeks, or maybe you have to go once a month at some point, and just or having somebody to talk to, like really authentically talk to and vent to, and really release all your pent up feelings.
Yeah, I was just talking to a client recently who was saying I hadn't talked to him in like probably over a year, and he's going through something, and he was like, I really don't have anybody else to talk to about this. And so sometimes that's the point of therapy, to have someone that you feel like you can tell whatever it is to.
And the great thing is it doesn't bite you back in the ass, because it's like that person, like for you, right? If a client just came into your door and it's that you don't know that client's, you didn't grow up with that client's family. You don't know the client's friends. You don't know the client's, whoever the client's dating. So at the end of the day, it's like a safe space to word vomit everything.
Yeah.
And then at the end of it, you just go, thank you, bye. I'll see you
Yeah.
next week.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I actually had a couple clients in the past tell me that they basically just pay me because they know I can't tell anybody anything that they say to me. That's not a guarantee anywhere else in life.
That's true. Well, attorneys.
Attorneys, yeah, attorney-client privilege. You're right. Actually, I think I told you this before, but a professor in college was like, "Do you really want to be a therapist? Maybe you should just be an attorney." I was so confused at the time. I'm like, "What? How are they similar?"
Now you're like, I get it.
Now I get it. Now I get it.
That's funny. Thanks for the breakdown. That was really interesting, because I'm always confused. I'm like, man, that was such a narcissistic reaction of mine.
Yeah.
I'll just think, I'm like, and I'll be inconsistent, or I'll say you're not allowed to do that, but I am, and then I do something. I go, oh, that was kind of, and then it makes me feel, am I a mild narcissist?
I mean, this is why I think healthy people should ask themselves that question. But this is why I think it gets tossed around so much, because it is very confusing, and it's kind of gray, and it's kind of contradictory at times. So everybody can have some traits of narcissism, because we can all be selfish. But just like anything else, it's about how often is this happening and how bad is it when it happens.
Mm.
So for a narcissist, it's going to happen more frequently, and it's going to be worse than the average person. So their reactions to things are going to be way over the top. And that's one of the signs, like, why are you showing up at my job right now? Like, that's one
Oh,
of the red flags, by the way.
I definitely dated a couple of those.
Yeah, that's a bit much here. Like, why are we doing that? So,
But maybe, sorry, even maybe if a person asks, am I a narcissist, might be a sign that they aren't.
right. And unfortunately, that is a might. Because again, narcissists do have these moments when they're like, damn, am I the problem? And you know, usually it doesn't go well if you tell them the truth.
Uh, mm, it-
So that's why it's so hard to help them, because even when you tell them the truth, sometimes they're like, now I just won't talk to you.
or yeah, I'm getting a new therapist. She didn't.
Or I'm going to be mad at you for saying
Uh,
that, or I'm going to find a reason that you're the problem here. You know,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
a lot of different reactions that they could have, but so sometimes they have like this smidge of awareness about it, and so they do say that. And again, this is why it's so confusing, because healthy people are like, oh shit, am I a narcissist? And it's a good question to ask yourself, and it's a good question to sit with. But it is unlikely that the average person is a narcissist, because it's a pretty severe disorder.
Are you working with any now?
No, I've actually only worked with one person that I would diagnose as a narcissist. I've worked with a lot of borderlines, and again, borderlines can have some abusive qualities and traits. But yeah, that didn't go very well working with the narcissist.
Did you feel like even as a therapist you had to walk on eggshells?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had to be very careful and document the shit out of every session, because they twist and turn, and I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel safe as a therapist.
Wow.
Yeah.
But they need to be really smart, right? Because there's a lot of lies and a spider web, like level of lies that they're just building and building and building, and they have to remember all those lies. That's a lot of energy.
The smarter ones are usually more successful, but you don't have to be smart.
Oh, you just be a dumb one. You'd be like, no, I'm all day. But you said, well, it's because there's always an excuse. That's true. You make an easy excuse of, oh, it's because you made me do it, or because you said this, or because you did it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can see that.
I remember going to a personality disorder training, and the guy was saying, like, when you're working with like people with psychopath or narcissism, you want to tell them as little about yourself as possible, because they can and will use any of it against you. And that's the
Oh.
truth. Even like doing couples counseling with somebody who's abusive, anything you say in couples counseling is going to come back up later, that they're, if they want to have fuel for a fire, they're going to bring up what you said later, which is why couples counseling isn't usually advised in an abusive relationship.
What?
Yeah, because if you come into the office, let's say with one of your abusers, and you're like, he did this, he did that, he did this, he's going to be like, oh, you're going to run and tell the therapist that I did this? How about I do this to shut you up? Or, whatever. Yeah. Or
Yeah.
you said this in therapy. What is that supposed to mean? Is that really what you think of me? Or, things like that.
When you role play, and our listeners can't see this, but my jaw is mostly on the floor the entire time. I'm looking at Elise like, oh my God. The whole like, there's some things are so mean. It's just so sad. It really breaks my heart. Like, and these people deal with this every day. Like I had one actually employee, and she was really good. She was with us maybe 2-3 years. The first year she was fantastic. I was like, oh, you're great. I was adding more hours for her. I was giving her better positions. I was doing all this stuff. Then her performance started slipping, and she started showing up late. Then she started wearing a lot of sweaters in the summertime. Then she was wearing a turtleneck in the summertime one time, and I went, oh no, this sounds weird. So I brought her in and I said, hey, I was talking about her performance and everything. And I said, are you okay? And then she looked at me, and I just asked her like 2 more times, are you okay? Silence. Are you and she cried, and she told me everything, and how he would like turn up the stereo as loud as possible during the time he would beat her, because so the neighbors don't hear, and she thinks like that. And she lived with him for the entire 3 years she was with us. So I was like, we're moving you out of there, like that's it. We're gonna do. So I was calling her every day, like, hey, I'll find something for you. Let's move out. I'll go over there. I'll move you. Everything. And in the beginning, I didn't think she would go, and finally, she had, I guess, a friend or something that just went to her place, and she just left with like literally a backpack full of things, and she left as when he went to work or something, and she felt bad. She felt
Yeah.
terrible for doing it. And then then we found her counseling, like free counseling and things like that, and so then I checked in with her maybe a couple years after, or every 6 months or something like that, and she seemed great. So it was
Yeah.
really nice for her to be in a different relationship that wasn't, or at that time, wasn't abusive. I haven't really, followed up or whatnot in the last couple of years, but she seemed a lot happier.
That was amazing of you, let me say, first of all, as a boss, to even take that kind of interest and concern in your employees. But yeah, I mean, at first it feels like you're doing something wrong or selfish or bad because, again, that's how you've been conditioned throughout the relationship, that you don't get to do anything for you, your opinion doesn't matter, those kinds of things. But the longer you're away from the person, the more clarity you're able to gain, and then the stronger you get coming back into yourselves. And I just feel that the need to highlight that human beings in general are very easily manipulated. And I think we become less likely to be manipulated when we have been through it and we know what to recognize and we know what is tolerable and what's not. But in general, I mean, I think that people view it as weakness, and I don't see it as weakness at all, because I just think that in general, human beings are very easily manipulated.
Why?
I don't know. Maybe it's the nature of our brains and the fact that we can always learn. And so if somebody presents a new perspective, we can easily buy into that.
Mm.
Especially if it sounds legit or it makes sense in our head, or if they can do it in a way that makes us feel a certain way, then I think, you know, we I hate to bring this up, but you know, the Germans were able to convince a lot of people that the Jews were less than. And here in the United States, we were able to convince a lot of people that the Native Americans were less than, and then that the African Americans were less than. And all throughout history, those are recent examples, but all throughout history, that's been a thing. Like, many populations have been slaves in
Yeah.
different cultural times. So how is it that we are able to do that? It's I don't necessarily know that I have the explanation for that, but I know that it's a thing that's happened all throughout history. So we are easily manipulated.
Mm. I wonder if it's because we don't give up hope, so we're hoping. We want to buy the good story, we want to buy the positive story. We want to buy that things are going to get better. And also on top of that, maybe we don't want to take responsibility, like making the hard decision and saying these people are bad. Okay, it's their fault. It's not our fault.
I think there's a level of fear involved too. Like, when you think about how dictators come into power, there's usually they create an enemy,
Mm-hmm.
and then they polarize the people, and they create tension. And so I guess you could say there is a strategy to it. And again, I don't know if it's conscious always on their part, but I guess you could say there's a strategy to it, because united we stand and divided we fall. We know that. So uh, if they can create enough discord, then we're not united, and then we're susceptible. But usually we're also scared. We're scared of whoever this enemy is that they've created for us. And in an abusive relationship, we're scared that we're the problem, or we're scared that they're going to hurt us, or we're scared that they're more powerful than us, or they're scared that they're going to destroy our career, or whichever way it's going. you know, so usually there's a level of fear involved as well.
Oh, absolutely. I think so. Hmm. So interesting. I think there's so many layers to this. And
Yeah.
it's ongoing work. Aren't they discovering more and more things um about behavioral patterns all the time?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're always learning and expanding our understanding of things. I mean, if you think about it, like people are obsessed now with serial killers and true crime stories and all of that stuff, but serial killers are like a relatively new thing, and we learned the most about serial killers from the first serial killer.
Wait. Do you think it's a relatively new thing because we identified somebody that, killed multiple people and felt, because maybe it always existed, but we
Oh
never.
yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that killers have always existed. It's just that killing is now not socially acceptable. So when we it's so now that, you know, because back in the day, like somebody offended you, you kill them. Like that's just what you do. We had the gun wars or whatever, where they had the Western like showdown where you like
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. The
duel
duels, the
masters,
duels.
yeah, the duel.
Yeah.
And
I-
before guns, it was swords, and before that, it was, you know. So we've always been killers, but it's just now that it's way less socially acceptable. So now it's like, okay, what's up with you that
yeah.
you want to kill all these people?
Remember it actually did, like, the whole gladiators were really it was a business. It was a slavery business.
Oh
They
yeah,
people and
it was
raised.
entertainment, Julie.
Yeah,
That's how fucked up
TV.
we used to be.
Isn't that crazy? That is TV. That was basically our nowadays version of TV, and people are like, TV's too violent. Really? Talk
Yeah.
about the gladiators. Now that was violent.
I'd rather see it on a screen than in person. I mean, I'm very sensitive to violence. So for me, I really cannot imagine just watching someone die, but that's what we used to do all the time. Like we used to hang people in the street. Like it's
I
just
know.
like,
Own them, right? As a town, let's throw rocks at this person until
yeah,
they die. Like, what?
I know.
I couldn't do that. I barely. I know. I can't even watch. So my brother-in-law always watches this gore on, like, just
Oh,
random, videos online, and I can't watch it. I watched it once, and I go, "Why did you send me that?" And I had nightmares. And then my
mhm.
mom, like, showed me some, like, a dog attack, and I was like, "Oh!" And I literally cry. I can't, because it's too sad. Maybe I'm just too sensitive.
I know I'm sensitive to it. I have one client that loves to show me videos of like video games and movie clips, and I'm like, this is awful. Why are you showing me this?
I get nightmares. Do you get nightmares?
Oh, I get nightmares for sure. Easily.
Ugh.
So
Especially when justice, some type of, like, the killing that's injustice, or something that's like people with their hands tied and they can't do anything about it. Oh, kills me.
I know. Even like, well, this is a totally different subject, but it's not actually totally different because we were saying that people are easily manipulated, and TV is something that easily manipulates us. So I've been watching Yellowstone, which is really popular right now. And on Yellowstone, this family is like super fucked up and they're killing all these people, and it's super like awful. But yet I feel so much empathy when they suffer. I'm like, oh no, look at this person who's a total fucking bitch, but she's crying and now I feel so bad for her. And that's what TV does for us. It like manipulates us into feeling bad for the perpetrator instead of the victim. So
Narcissism.
yeah, and TV can manipulate us into feeling bad for anyone. It made us feel bad for Jeffrey Dahmer. People were feeling bad for him.
Ugh. Yeah. No. Next.
Yeah. So, but that's just an example of how easily manipulated we are. And Hollywood figured out how to do it. They were like, you know what? Here's how we're going to do this. We're going to tell the story from a different angle and get you.
Yeah. We're gonna scare a bunch of people. And so the fear tactic, right? In the 70s, when they would put something on TV and it would a worldwide broadcast. And then we only had 2 channels at that time or something, right? So it's like
Yeah.
everybody had to watch this.
Yeah. Well, that's a
Troll.
whole other subject, media and manipulation. But yeah, I mean, all of us we're very easily manipulated. And so we're all vulnerable in that case. And, you know, the best thing we can do is educate ourselves and give relationships time and leave if it's getting worse, not better.
No, I love that. What a great ending to this episode, Alicia.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, guys, we'll see you next time.